I'm here today with Upland Sandy,
Hello, hello.
who is an Indiana graduate, if I'm correct,
Yep.
and I'm a Purdue student currently. So we already disagree on one thing. So take me through what kind of got you interested into politics, being an activist. You obviously do some work for More Perfect Union. I've seen you on there. What kind of got you into this?
Well, I was always in a pretty political household. My parents were kind of, as far as I can remember, Democrats, and being a Democrat was something that was kind of important to my understanding about who we are as a family and what good people are. I go through 2012 elections. I kind of remember Obama's first term, but not really. Go through 2012, and then in 2016, I started learning about this guy Bernie Sanders, and he wants to do Medicare for all. Well, what's that? How does the current healthcare system work? We're paying all these middlemen that provide nothing. Well, what does Hillary Clinton say? She's like the front runner that everybody's heard about. Oh, she doesn't like this? Well, oh, she's funded by the people who make money off of this terrible system. Well, that's not, I thought we were the good guys. I thought the blue team was the good guys. And so I started to figure out then that politics is a whole lot more of a complicated propaganda game. And it's still something worth my time, but it's not about blue team and red team as it is as much the 99% versus the 1%.
And I think that's a really solid thing that you mentioned, because unless I'm incorrect, it feels like oftentimes people that are far left or far right, everyone has the same bill. If something bad happens to you, one medical bill can hurt you. So no matter your idea is Medicare for all, getting there, or something else, we all are affected by the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you go to Trump country, for example, I mean, that's the kind of place when Bernie Sanders would talk about, a large percentage of the country can't afford a sudden $500 bill. That's exactly the demographic. I mean, there's certainly so many people in poverty in Chicago and in large cities and in blue areas.
Indianapolis?
In Indianapolis, for sure. But, I mean, go to Seymour, Indiana. That's the Rust Belt, man. That's where you used to have opportunity, you used to have jobs, and a long combination of neoliberal factors later. I mean, that's those people are ripe and ready for that kind of political message just as much as your big cities are, if not more, I think.
Very, very solid point, I think. And something in Indiana, obviously, because you've been able to go around Indiana. I've interned for 2 statewide officials, one for 2 summers as an intern in the official capacity, and then the second for 1 summer. And obviously you've been around the state a lot. What would you say is something that, where do you, see the data center project going?
Oh my God, I think this is the sleeping giant that the political class just isn't ready for. They're used to being able to, maybe not everybody, but you often get a job once you're done at your time being in the city county council, or whatever little role in local government you have that approves zoning requests and things like that. We're used to being able to just hear, well, you got 2 options. One is a demon, and you're being told that the other side's a demon, and then the other side are with you in just enough of a way that you're made to care, and you're made to care and go and vote. But this is the kind of issue that really smashes the illusion, I think. People are saying, wait a second, you're going to build this massive data center right outside of my house. You're going to pay for all the infrastructure upgrades with my tax dollars, and then we're giving these people an abatement. We're giving them a discount on their tax bill for no reason, and they're not providing any jobs. But all of my elected officials, whether I'm a Democrat in Indianapolis or I'm a Republican in rural Indiana, all of you people are lining up behind this when everybody who voted you in hates this. It's really showing that there is a disconnect between the political class and how they view the world and the incentives they're operating under and the rest of us. So I think this one is going to really blow up in the faces of everybody involved.
Definitely. And I mean, obviously on your drive up here, you probably noticed just how everything is with tons of data centers going up. Meta's got a project in
Went through Lebanon, yeah. Lebanon, went through Lebanon.
Warehouse City.
Yeah, I recorded a little bit on my phone as I went there. Cranes. I don't know if the data center is visible from the highway, but I think, I could be wrong, that it's the new Eli Lilly manufacturing plant that I was watching go up. So that whole Leap District is a whole boondoggle, and people boondoggle.
Yep.
Because Boone can. I think normally people wouldn't care. There's corruption going on under my nose, and I don't notice it. But as long as I'm feeling like I'm at least like staying afloat in life, and the Democrats care about woke, and the Republicans care about me just a little bit more than the other side, like the illusion keeps marching on. But this is the kind of situation where that stasis can't hold anymore. Something's going to break.
Totally. And where do you kind of see, I guess, from an aspect of the electoral side in Indiana, where do you see the Democrats? Do you think that they will be competitive? And not just in maybe a state like Indiana, but in states like, well, Iowa's more of a middle ground state, but a state like Kentucky. I mean, Brashear got elected, but do you think they need to run a more populist message or a more moderate message in a state like Indiana, Kentucky? Obviously, Brashear is a very well-known last name in Kentucky, like by in Indiana.
Right.
But aside from those two names, they tend to vote very much red. How do you think Democrats can be competitive?
I think the populism is moderation. When people hear Bernie Sanders, and I mean, I'm not pulling out any piece of data, but I think it exists about people who like self-identify as conservative, liberal, or moderate Democrats. And the 2016 election especially, Bernie was the choice for people who called themselves conservative Democrats. And what does that mean? I mean, Obama won Indiana in 2008. Those are the people who said, Wall Street just gambled away the economy, right? Obama's coming in on a message of hope and change. Like, however we might think that people will feel in these places about a black man named Barack Hussein Obama, voting for him, it's a message of the system has failed you, and democracy is your route to changing it and restoring trust in government. And I think they completely pissed away, the Democrats, all of the goodwill that they brought up with Obama. And then Hillary Clinton, she's the senator from New York, like Wall Street corporations personified. And Bernie Sanders, who we might think is this radical left-wing guy, was the choice for those conservative Democrats that felt that way. So I think your Graham Plattner style, your Dan Osborne style, that to me, I think, to people who don't live in the Beltway and people who are not talking about politics on a daily basis, that feels more moderate to them than like a Jasmine Crockett or something like that. So I think populism is the way to go, but if they don't pick that, it's not an inevitability that they're going to win. I think right now it's looking like just backlash to Trump, which is something that's typical with a party in office, but also when you do a lot of unpopular things, Democrats are going to get kind of a rising tide in this coming 2026 election and probably 2028 because of that unpopularity. But what are you going to do beyond that? You can't your electoral strategy can't be, we hope for the other guys to mess up so bad that voters decide that we're actually the lesser of two evils this time. You need to actually build something that people can get behind and like feel good about themselves supporting.
Definitely. And while we're on the topic of Indiana, what's the biggest issue in your opinion? I mentioned the data centers and some other stuff, but to you, what's an issue that really sparks to you?
Well,
what do you want to see change more than anything?
Well, I would put that two ways. One, I think the second biggest issue besides data centers related is utility bills. I think that is something that
and property tax.
Property tax is a big one too, and I could talk a whole lot about that. But the thing that's like really near and dear to me that is affecting me today, the fact that my car broke down here in Lafayette, I could go back home to Bloomington tonight and put in my AirPods, maybe get a beer if there was a robust, commuter light rail system like we used to have in Indiana. I used to be able to get from Lafayette to Indianapolis to Bloomington to anywhere in the state generally through the railroad. And we sold that out with the advent of the car and obviously also the advent of the airplane. But I think it's it's a matter of everything. Convenience of in the long term is cheaper. You're not dumping billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars into the roads and then raising a toll on the interstate to pay for roads. When we give people this other option, it also reduces traffic. Like bringing back that commuter rail system would go a long way in so many things. Not only revitalizing the old, small towns that were built around the railroad. When we cut that off, like we also cut off those communities, and people are moving away. The kids don't come back. They go to college and they never come back. Like Indiana's got to figure out how to revive the small town, and I think reviving the trains and commuter rail would go a really big way. But give me a while before that really picks up steam. But I've always got faith for it.
Definitely. And then one last thing I wanted to ask you about while we're on the topic of Indiana is how do you think frozen tuition, not just frozen tuition, but how do you think colleges with AI, we got some good small universities here like DePaul University, we got some good public universities like Purdue, like IU, and a lot of good private, I mentioned that briefly, but even you got Notre Dame, Butler. At Purdue we have frozen tuition, which has been good and bad. There's positives and negatives on both sides. But where do you kind of see, I guess, I should rephrase it this way, education going as a whole in the future? Because, we got a lot of good universities and colleges in Indiana, but with an AI world coming, where do you see it going from an aspect in a state like Indiana or the Rust Belt?
Well, I think you made a good observation there that Indiana, one of its really big industries that doesn't get a lot of attention is education. We have Purdue, we have IU, we have Notre Dame, we have, even the University of Evansville,
Indiana State, Boston.
Yeah, there's all of these, high level, high research esteemed, and these smaller schools have another role in the broader education conversation. But what we've seen over the last 40 plus years is really the emergence of a university industrial complex. It's like the military industrial complex. If there are these contractors and they're the only ones in the game and the only people who are paying for it are the government, we are going to ratchet up that price. And we know that when the government's appropriating increasing billions, and we're lobbying them to do it every year, you're going to pay $300 for a case of like a 24 pack of Coke for soldiers in Iraq. That's what we were paying for Coke, like Coca-Cola for soldiers in Iraq. Whenever you've got a situation where there's an outsized ability for a single payer to pay, you're going to get a ratcheting up of the price. And that's what happens with colleges. When students get federally backed student loans, and they're going to say, hey, you want a really nice gym, you want a really good athletics program that's part of what your school pays for, you want to have really nice landscaping, we're going to add good mental health services, we're going to add all of these different bells and whistles and amenities to try to target the students that we're all competing for, that will pay $40,000 a year out of state. And so obviously if you freeze tuition, that helps some things, but it also makes it a lot more competitive when you've got international students that don't have their tuition frozen. But Indiana hemorrhages all of these college graduates, whether they are Hoosiers that are going to in-state schools or they're people coming from out of state to go to Indiana. All that really ends up doing is raising our prices, because somebody from San Francisco is going to look at a $7 bagel and go, oh my God, I'm not even going to look at the price, I'm just going to buy it. And that raises everybody's cost of living. That's what happens in Mexico City, and that's why all the remote workers get a lot of hate. So we're going to have to figure out a way to make some of that golden goose, some of all those students coming into Indiana for our great colleges and universities, making sure that all that money doesn't just stay in some kind of corrupt and opaque nonprofit bureaucracy, and actually make sure that some of those benefits come to the state of Indiana. And when that AI bubble pops, and I think there's going to be a larger recession, also looking at a lot of the geopolitical indicators happening right now, when people start to pare back their spending, even those wealthier families from New Jersey, from Naperville, that feel like they can go send their kid out of state to have that Midwest college experience in the Big Ten or whatever, that's going to be one of the first things they look at paring back on, is spending $50,000 a year on out-of-state tuition. And when that happens, you're going to see economies in places like Bloomington or places like West Lafayette take a real a real big nosedive because they built themselves out so much on the assumption that this kind of excess and this kind of just excess money lying around is never going to dry up. And once it does, they're going to be starving a little bit.
Definitely. And one last thing while we're on the topic of Indiana, what's your favorite sports team, or maybe a favorite park that you would recommend somebody who's lived in Indiana for a while to visit, or somebody visiting Indiana or coming to college at a school in Indiana? You can't say the Indy 500, and you can't say the Colts or the Pacers, so or IU or Purdue. So what's maybe a park or another team you like?
Well, as far as a park goes, Brown County. I mean, I know I went to IU and I live in Bloomington now. My heart's always going to be there, but I really think the rolling hills of southern Indiana are just immaculate and kind of the best geography in the state. I mean, the wetlands in the north are kind of nice when you're not, going into former, steel sites and EPA Superfund areas, but I would say Brown County is the most beautiful part of the state, and there's a park there. It's great. A lot of caves nearby. I love caving, and can't get that many other places. And then favorite sports team, man, the Pacers are really electric, and with the energy they had recently, I love IU. I love the fact that it's a university rather than like a company, like a franchise. But as much as I love winning the national championship, we bought the championship, you know what I mean? And if you've got, it starts this arms race and spending on amateur athletics where the students used to not be able to get paid, but now they can market themselves, but they can't get paid. But the NCAA is a nonprofit, but their executives are making tens of millions of dollars. It's all kind of a big scam.
And they're all former politicians.
And there's an incredible amount of tomfoolery that goes on in that world. So as much as I like the idea of college sports as being kind of a better theoretical idea to be a fan of and get behind, that whole system is a lot more gross to me than even the NBA. The NBA is honest. We're a company. We want to make money. This team could leave if it wants to, but I think just the recent energy around their finals run last year, the Pacers feel like the most fun thing to follow right now.
Totally. Well, thanks for answering some of my questions I have about Indiana, the Midwest, and where it could go.
Yeah, it was a good little start to our journey.